Hi, I'm Riley and I'm 26 years old. I recently got married to the love of my life, but it wasn't without some drama. Let me explain what happened. I met David when I was doing a part-time job at a firm to complete my internship for my degree. Both of us were interning at the same place, and we often worked on the same projects. That's how we started talking. Soon we began meeting outside of work at cafes and movie theaters. We went on several dates before making our relationship official. David was studying at a college in a different state, but his hometown was the same as mine. He was in town because he had a semester off for his internship and chose to do it in our hometown. I was so glad he made that choice because I got to meet such an amazing man. David and I shared a love for many things, and we bonded over that. When it was time for David to go back to college, we were both heartbroken. I remember him being at my place the night before he left, and we just cried in each other's arms. David didn't want to leave me either. I made him promise to stay in touch every day, and he did. We both promised to take care of our health and to visit each other whenever we have free time. We spent the rest of that night making promises and holding each other close. After David left, we kept all our promises. Whenever one of us had a long break, we would fly to see each other. We talked on the phone for hours every day and kept each other updated on everything. That's how we kept our relationship strong. After a year of dating, we introduced each other to our families. My family welcomed David with open arms and loved how happy he made me. They had no problem considering him a part of the family. However, David's family was harder to win over. David's family was pretty conservative and didn't like the idea of their children dating while they were still in school, but they agreed to meet me anyway. At first, it was a bit awkward, but eventually, David's dad and siblings warmed up to me. The only one who didn't was David's mother, Greta. Greta was cold to me from the moment I arrived until the moment I left that weekend. She found every chance to make rude comments about me, mocking my choice of school and my interests. On my first night there during dinner, Greta even insulted my family's social standing. I was really upset when she said those things about my parents, and the rest of the table was shocked. David stood up for me though. "Mom, you're not allowed to talk to Riley so rudely," he said. Greta brushed it off. "Relax, I'm just stating facts." "Those facts are hurtful and untrue," David replied. "Well, maybe there's some truth to them since she didn't choose the better school. Riley's choices are not yours to judge. You owe her an apology." "Oh, please." "Fine, sorry, whatever." "That's not sincere, Mom. Apologize properly." "Sorry, Riley." "Thank you." David then told his mom, "Treat Riley with respect, or you won't be a part of our lives." After that, dinner continued, but it was still very awkward. I was hurt and upset by how David's mother treated me. She didn't even know me, and yet she was so harsh. I knew I didn't choose the most prestigious school, but that was because I wanted to stay close to home and be with my family. My parents could afford to send me to a better school, but I chose to stay. I loved that David stood up for me, especially against his own mother. It showed me that I would always be his number one, and that made me love him even more. When we were about to leave David's place that evening, his dad, Peter, apologized to me for his wife's behavior. "I'm truly sorry for Greta's behavior, Riley," Peter said. "You don't need to apologize for her, Peter," I replied. "Greta is just overprotective of David, you see." "I understand that feeling. My family is protective too. But does that mean they treated David the same way?" I asked. "Oh no, I'm sorry if I gave that impression. We're just protective of each other. The last thing they wanted was for one of us to get hurt, so they were cautious when someone new came into our lives, but once they saw how happy the person made us, they became more welcoming," Peter explained. "So, did your family welcome David warmly?" I asked. "Absolutely. They embraced him because they could see how happy he made me over the past year." "I'm glad he found a place in your family," Peter said. "Your family is different, and that's okay. I'm pretty good at adjusting to new dynamics." "I'm still sorry Greta hasn't been as welcoming," Peter said. "It's all right. I'm sure she'll come around with time," I reassured him. "I have to say, I love your enthusiasm," Peter smiled. "Thank you. I believe she'll change her perspective eventually." "I like your positivity. I truly hope Greta warms up to you," Peter said. That conversation with Peter made me feel more welcome in David's family. I knew it might take a while for Greta to accept me, but I was willing to wait because David was worth it. David also made sure to remind me that his mother's opinions never reflected how he felt about me. I was so grateful for David and glad he had my back, no matter what. As the years passed, David and I both graduated, and he moved back to our hometown. We moved in together and were so happy to finally spend all our time together, now that we weren't in a long-distance relationship. We went on frequent dates, and when we couldn't, we enjoyed long evening walks. We were inseparable. So it was no surprise when during one of our evening walks, David got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I was overjoyed and said yes through tears of happiness. And so began the next few tiring months of wedding planning. People often say that the months leading up to the wedding are the most stressful and constrain a relationship. But for us, the stress actually brought us closer together. The only obstacle was, as you might guess, David's mother, Greta. Greta insisted on being involved in every detail of the wedding. She needed to know about everything, down to the color of the tablecloths. She would call me every day at 8 a.m. sharp to ask about my plans for the day. I'd tell her the same thing every day, work. Then she'd ask about the wedding plans, and I'd remind her that while the wedding was important, I still needed to work to afford it. Greta would huff and tell me to take the wedding more seriously. At first, her comments annoyed me, but over time I learned to let them slide. I'd just say yes, and she'd make me promise to involve her in everything related to the wedding. I'd roll my eyes and agree but didn't actually involve her. After a while, I started feeling bad for not including Greta, so I talked to David about it. I feel bad for not involving Greta. I know her calls are annoying, but involving her might help my relationship with her, right? I asked David. Honestly, I doubt it, my love, David replied. What do you mean? I asked. She has this need to control everything, to the point where it could actually ruin the occasion, David explained. I see. Maybe we could let her help out with just a small part of the planning, I suggested. I know how you feel. You could let her help with something small, but don't get your hopes up. I'll keep my fingers crossed that she'll appreciate the chance and treat me well, I said. Just remember, David started to say. I've got your back no matter what, David reassured me. Thanks, babe. Let's hope for the best, I replied. I decided to let Greta help me pick out the cake for the wedding. I made it clear that while she could offer suggestions, I wasn't obligated to follow them. Greta agreed and told me not to worry. But when the day came to visit different vendors, Greta completely ignored my wishes. She made a big fuss about everything, from the appearance of the stores to the prices. She purposely criticized everything I liked and tried to haggle with the vendors. I was beyond embarrassed by her behavior, but out of respect for her being my future mother-in-law, I kept quiet. I knew David wouldn't have minded if I spoke up, but I decided to cut the day short instead. I told Greta I had urgent work to attend to, and that we could meet up later to finalize the cake details. I left before she could accuse me of not taking the wedding seriously because I'd had enough of her for the week. When David got home from work, he took one look at me and started laughing. Through his laughter, he asked, "So, how was your day with Mom?" "Oh, you have no idea. She embarrassed me the entire time," I replied. "Really? That's bad," David said, concerned. "Yeah. Bad enough that I think we need new vendors now." "See, I knew involving her was risky," he said, shaking his head. "I was just trying to make things better between us," I admitted. "My love, I'm going to remind you again that my mom's behavior doesn't define our relationship. I love you no matter what." "Thanks, darling. Maybe I won't involve Greta anymore. Sounds like a plan." And so the rest of the months leading up to the wedding went on as before, with Greta continuing to ask to be involved. I kept making excuses to keep her at a distance. Eventually, David stepped in. "Mom, we want to plan our wedding ourselves, without anyone else's input," he told her. "How could you manage such an important day on your own?" she asked, shocked. "Well, I'm not the only one planning the wedding. Riley is involved too," David explained. "She must be the one pushing you to exclude me." "I'm telling you, she's not good for you," Greta insisted. "No, listen. I was the one who suggested not involving you. In fact, Riley was the one who asked me to give you a chance. You need to stop blaming her. You wanted to exclude me. How could you do this to your own mother?" Greta said, hurt. "Mom, I didn't want to hurt you. We both just wish you'd respect our decisions." "You're pushing me away for her sake," she accused. "No, I'm asking for your understanding. Riley and I want to plan our dream wedding together. We really don't need any help. Fine, but I've always wanted the best for you, Greta said, relenting. We know, Mom, but we need your support, not your control, David said gently. I just worry about you, David, she said, softening. We appreciate that, but please, for my sake, respect our wishes, David replied. After that conversation, Greta stopped contacting us as much. I felt so relieved to not have to deal with her. David and I were finally able to fully focus on planning our wedding. When the big day arrived, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I was thrilled to finally marry the love of my life, and I desperately hoped everything would go smoothly. The ceremony went off without a hitch, and David and I were legally married. We were over the moon and couldn't wait to celebrate with drinks and dancing at the reception. However, things didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped. The reception started off well, but at some point, Greta had one drink too many. She ended up getting really drunk and caused a massive scene. She grabbed hold of me and loudly declared that she would never accept me as part of her family. I squirmed uncomfortably as I tried to free myself from Greta's strong grip. David, on the other hand, was furious. Mom, let go of Riley, he demanded. Oh, David, I've always known what's best for you. She's not right for you, Greta insisted. I've had enough of your behavior. Leave now, David replied, his voice firm. You won't throw your own mother out of your wedding, Greta protested. I'm dead serious. I won't tolerate any disrespect toward my wife, David declared. Peter, David's father, walked over and asked, What's going on here? Mom came over just to humiliate and insult Riley. I want her to leave. I won't have her treat Riley this way, David explained. What is wrong with you? I'm just being honest, Greta defended herself. Honesty doesn't give you the right to humiliate or insult us. I don't want to be associated with that, David replied sternly. Greta, let go, Peter said firmly. You can't be serious, Greta responded, shocked. Peter calmly said, Enjoy the rest of your evening and congratulations again, before walking away. I was very upset by the scene Greta had caused, but what upset me even more was that Peter couldn't enjoy the day with us. Still, the party carried on, and the day remained memorable for David and me. A couple of weeks later, David and I were buzzing with excitement as we prepared for our honeymoon to Italy. Visiting Italy was on both of our bucket lists, and we wanted our honeymoon to be as romantic as possible. We waited impatiently for the day to travel. Finally, when the day arrived, David and I frantically made sure we had all our passports and luggage together. Just as we were about to leave for the airport, our doorbell rang. We looked at each other in confusion because we didn't know who would come to our place that early in the morning. When we opened the door, we were shocked to see Greta standing there with her bag packed and her passport in hand. David looked at his mother angrily. What are you doing here, Mom? He asked. What do you mean? Quit playing dumb, Greta replied. Oh, I just thought I'd join you on your holiday. This isn't a holiday and you know it. How did you even know about our honeymoon dates? David demanded. You logged into your email on my laptop once and forgot to log out, Greta explained. When was this? College maybe? I can't remember, David said, surprised. You've been keeping tabs on him since college? You're insane, I exclaimed. I'm not insane. A concerned mother looks out for her son. And why on earth would you want to come on our honeymoon? I asked, still in disbelief. I won't rest until I show David you're not good enough, Greta insisted. That's enough. Leave, David said firmly. I'm not leaving, Greta replied stubbornly. David was seething with anger. I held his arm to calm him down. He then looked at me and smirked. What's your plan? I asked. If my mother wants to sabotage us, let's play her own game, David said with a grin. I don't get it. What do you mean? I asked, confused. Remember our cop costumes from last Halloween? David asked. Yeah, why? I replied. Where are they? He asked eagerly. They're in the box on top of the wardrobe, I answered. Perfect, David said, then rushed into the bedroom. I stood awkwardly with Greta in the doorway. She smirked at me, thinking she had won. I heard David rummaging around in the bedroom before finally emerging with our luggage. He asked both of us if we were ready to leave. We nodded and Greta walked with a spring in her step. David was insistent on helping his mother with her bags. While loading Greta's bag into the car, I noticed David slipping something into it. David looked at me and winked. I was confused but couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. David insisted that I drive the entire way to the airport. David remained on his phone, but that didn't stop Greta from talking about how excited she was to spend quality time with David and how they had never had a mother-son vacation. I felt very uncomfortable, while David just ignored everything his mother was saying. When we made it to the airport, we arrived just in time to check in. While David and my luggage checked in smoothly, Greta's bag began beeping in the machine. The TSA made her empty out her carry-on bag. Inside was a book that looked like it had something hidden in it. Now, just to set the scene, there was a large line of people both behind and beside her, all impatient but also curious. Everyone looked at Greta. The TSA officer pulled out the book, and the title was How to Spice Up Your Life in the Bedroom. Inside the book was a pair of handcuffs. I couldn't stop the snicker that escaped me. I immediately recognized the items. The handcuffs were from our Halloween costumes last year, and the book was a gag gift given to David by his friends at his bachelor party. Greta's face turned bright red from the embarrassment. The TSA agent looked at her with a raised brow, while the people around her began snickering and whispering among themselves. Just then, an announcement came through requesting David and me to board our plane. I looked at David in shock. He told me that he had managed to find a flight that was leaving an hour earlier than our original one, and since it was the same airline, they were happy to accommodate the change in time. I let out a full laugh at how everything had turned out. Greta hurriedly tried to stuff the contents of her bag back in, while David and I rushed to our boarding gate. Greta watched in horror as we boarded the plane. She looked angry and embarrassed. She tried to call David, but he let it go to voicemail. David and I enjoyed our honeymoon. Every so often, we would remember Greta's face in the airport and burst out laughing. When we came back, David cut off all contact with Greta. We still kept in touch with Peter and even invited him over for dinner one day to share the story. He burst out laughing too and agreed that Greta deserved it. Greta kept trying to approach us, but we never acknowledged or entertained her. The airport incident became a cherished memory for us, one we will definitely recount to friends and family for years to come. Our home is filled with laughter, love, and inside jokes, with the handcuff incident remaining a hilarious testament to our ability to weather storms together. This incident is a reminder that no matter the circumstances, David and I will always find a way to stand by each other, laugh together, and overcome any obstacles that come our way. Our journey continues, full of love and laughter, tied by an unbreakable bond that will remain strong throughout the years. Thanks for listening.
My name is Maggie, and I work for a company. At 29 years old, I recently tied the knot with my husband, William, following over 2 years of courtship. We embarked on our marital journey in the same apartment I'd occupied since my days of singledom, a generous gift from my father upon securing my job. With my brother and his wife opting to live with our parents, I seized the opportunity to carve out my own path. My father, never short on resources, ensured I had a cozy apartment close to our family home. Whether his intention was to provide support or keep me nearby, I'm not entirely sure. Nonetheless, I found myself in a comfortable living space. William had previously resided in a cramped apartment, unsuitable for two. Hence, upon our decision to wed, he promptly relocated to my more spacious and affordable abode. My initial encounter with William's family residence occurred during a winter visit to their snow-laden locale. Having grown up in the city, the sheer volume of snow and bone-chilling temperatures astounded me. At William's family home, nestled in a snow-heavy region, I encountered a world entirely foreign to my urban upbringing. An old-fashioned house, reminiscent of a fairy tale setting, housed my mother-in-law and brother-in-law. Once, when William's father was alive, they dabbled in part-time farming amidst vast fields. Their nearest neighbors were a considerable distance away. What truly took me aback, however, was the placement of the toilet and bath outside the confines of the house. Initially, I believed I could handle occasional visits, but the thought of residing there long-term seemed daunting, particularly during harsh winters with snow and freezing temperatures. Summoning the courage to venture outside for a midnight bathroom break was a feat in itself, and the risk of catching a cold post-shower loomed large due to plummeting temperatures. During our marriage greetings, I didn't experience the shower ordeal firsthand, but navigating the outdoor toilet was undeniably challenging. Despite the hardships, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law were exceptionally kind, offering a sense of relief. Though we wouldn't be sharing a roof, the notion of us morphing into one family was comforting, and I yearned to cultivate a harmonious bond with them. However, a nagging concern lingered. My mother-in-law's demeanor shifted when alone with my husband, her smiles masking murmured grievances. Moreover, my brother-in-law's past marriage, shrouded in mystery due to my husband's reluctance to divulge details, fueled my unease. Although marital issues are commonplace, my husband's silence regarding his brother's divorce left me with unanswered questions. Despite my father's reassurances at our wedding, citing my mother-in-law's radiant smile as a sign of her kindness, doubts gnawed at me. I returned a smile to my father, but my mother's expression hinted at a different sentiment. Despite her pleasant facade in public, she often wore a grumpy countenance when she believed no one was watching. "Be careful," she cautioned me, "she might be two-faced." Yet I brushed off her warning, believing any potential issues would only arise if we lived together. Initially, our married life in the apartment unfolded joyfully, free from apprehension. However, 3 months into our union, a shift occurred. My husband gradually began shirking household responsibilities, unilaterally making decisions. Despite our agreement to share chores, he started to slack off. Initially, he'd assist with tasks like cleaning the bathroom or preparing dinner when I returned late from work. Yet, his willingness waned, leaving me burdened with these duties alone. Sometimes, his impatience would surface, demanding dinner hastily as he claimed fatigue from his own workday. My frustration mounted not just from the workload, but also from his unilateral decisions. Perhaps there were warning signs before marriage, but I had mistaken them for signs of decisiveness and reliability. Soon after our wedding, furniture and a sofa mysteriously arrived at our doorstep, leaving me bewildered. When questioned, my husband casually remarked, "I don't feel the current vibe of this room suits me," with a smile. So I contemplated the idea of replacing the furniture with pieces that suited my taste. However, my husband had different plans. He wanted to discard all my chosen furniture and overhaul the room to match his preferences. Had he consulted me, we could have selected new pieces together. Yet he acted independently, disregarding my preferences entirely. While he had every right to style his own space as he pleased, I found his unilateral decisions regarding our shared living area irksome. His design sense lacked coherence, leaving me speechless at the hodgepodge of mismatched furniture colors and shapes. Then he sprung an unexpected proposal on me. "It would be nice if you could pay for it. After all, this was originally your apartment, wasn't it?" I was already frustrated by his tasteless furniture takeover, and now he was asking me to foot the bill. I questioned him incredulously, pointing out that it was furniture he purchased on his own. Uncharacteristically, I stood my ground firmly, unwilling to let him off the hook. Despite the tensions at home, we decided to spend our first Christmas as a married couple at his parents' house. It was my inaugural visit, and I felt a mix of anxiety and nervousness. Yet my mother-in-law greeted me kindly, assuring me that I could relax there. Still, I couldn't shake off a sense of caution, recalling my mother's advice. There might be a hidden side to my mother-in-law, I thought. During my stay, I observed my mother-in-law mostly resting, reminiscing about past times when brides ate alone in the kitchen. Confused by her tales, I noticed my brother-in-law subtly cautioning her, but my husband remained oblivious. As I endured my mother-in-law's sarcastic remarks, I couldn't help but wonder about the dynamics within their family. I volunteered to tidy up after dinner, but she waved me off with a smile, insisting, "I'll do it. I wouldn't want you to break any of our precious dishes." Her words echoed my mother's earlier advice, hitting home with their accuracy. The first day brimmed with her subtle sarcasm, setting an uneasy tone. The following day, events took a darker turn. With my husband out drinking with friends and my brother-in-law on a Firebird Day trip, it was just my mother-in-law and me. Frankly, I felt a knot of nerves tightening in my stomach. After dinner, as she stepped into the shower, I finally began to relax. But her parting words, "I'm going to bed now, make sure to lock the front door," jolted me back to reality. Awkwardly, I affirmed her instruction and readied myself to bathe in the separate bathhouse. A chilly prospect for this unaccustomed city dweller. As I settled into the tub, the lights in the main house abruptly went out. An initial assumption of a power outage wavered when I noticed neighboring lights still aglow. Straining to hear over the water, I thought I detected faint footsteps outside. Hesitantly, I remained motionless, listening intently. Soon, darkness enveloped me, prompting suspicion that my mother-in-law might be orchestrating a cruel prank. Despite doubting her capable of such malice, her penchant for sarcasm with a smile planted seeds of unease. Hastily drying off and changing into pajamas, I fumbled in the pitch-black room. Moonlight eventually filtered in, granting me some visibility. As I pondered the absurdity of the situation, my attempts to exit the room proved futile. The door remained stubbornly shut, impervious to my efforts. Panic began to set in. Though a window offered an escape route, its bars sealed my fate. Thankfully, I had my smartphone, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I attempted to reach my husband for assistance, but he remained unresponsive. On the third try, he finally picked up, only to bellow loudly, clearly intoxicated and preoccupied with his revelry. Desperately, I pleaded for his help, explaining my predicament with the bathroom door refusing to budge. His response, dismissive and vague, offered little comfort. He blamed me for showering at such a time, citing his inebriation as a barrier to his assistance before abruptly ending the call. Subsequent attempts to reach him proved futile as he seemingly switched off his phone. Contemplating my options, I considered involving the authorities but hesitated, fearing potential repercussions from my mother-in-law's wrath. Instead, I resolved to seek a means of escape independently. Shouting for help through the frozen bathroom window proved fruitless. With each passing moment, the threat of freezing in the frigid confines loomed larger. Just as I was on the verge of contacting emergency services, a voice from outside shattered the silence, inquiring about the power outage. Relief flooded over me as I realized someone was attempting to assist. With gentle knocking, the door finally yielded, granting me freedom. Profoundly grateful, I thanked the elderly neighbor who had come to my aid. His muttered comment about my mother-in-law's habitual behavior added a somber note to the situation. Guided to safety at the neighbor's house, I was met with surprise from his wife. After the neighbor explained the ordeal, she welcomed me warmly, offering solace in the form of a blanket. It was a small comfort in the face of the unsettling events of the evening. Clad only in pajamas, I found solace in a cup of warm tea graciously offered by the elderly neighbor once my nerves had settled. It was then that the old man disclosed unsettling tales of my mother-in-law's history of tormenting her daughters-in-law. "Your mother-in-law has a habit of bullying her son's wives," he explained gravely. "She's locked several in the bath before. The wife of the eldest son suffered multiple incidents and eventually left the house. Even your husband's previous fiancé fell victim to her schemes." As the old couple recounted, they had noticed the bathroom light shining in the darkness, prompting their intervention. Aware of our marriage, they expressed concern that my mother-in-law might repeat her past behavior. With the hour growing late and the main house securely locked, I opted to spend the night with the neighbors. Awakening to the sound of an ambulance siren the next morning, I peered out the window to witness its arrival at my in-laws' house. My husband stood frozen by the detached bathroom, his expression tense. I hurried towards the commotion, fearing the worst. Perhaps my husband had mistaken my absence for an emergency and summoned help. However, the reality that unfolded was far more surreal. My husband, upon seeing me, erupted in accusations, questioning why his mother lay motionless in the bathroom. Stunned by his words, I cautiously approached the scene, peering into the bathroom to witness a figure lying prone on the floor. Relief washed over me as the woman stirred, indicating that her condition was not critical. It was my mother-in-law, her features unmistakable even in the dim light. I couldn't comprehend why she lay there, motionless. A paramedic explained that she had likely slipped on soap, losing consciousness from the impact. My panic during the blackout may have caused me to scatter items like soap, which remained unnoticed in the darkness. In the early morning, my mother-in-law might have entered the bathroom to check on me, only to slip and fall due to the soap. As she was carried past on a stretcher, her stern glare bore into me. Later, when my husband was transported to the hospital, the neighbors offered their relief that I remained unharmed. They saw it as divine retribution for the hardships I faced as a daughter-in-law. Grateful for their intervention, I reflected on how fortunate I was, realizing that the outcome could have been different if not for the old man's timely help. After changing, I informed my brother-in-law about my mother-in-law's hospitalization. He decided to rush to the hospital immediately. Alone, I returned to the detached bathroom, contemplating the events of the previous night. There, I noticed a stick used to bar the door shut, explaining why I couldn't escape. That afternoon, my mother-in-law returned home, her anger directed at me for leaving the bathroom without informing her. As I pondered my response, my husband joined in, blaming me for the ordeal. However, my brother-in-law intervened, condemning their cruel game of locking me in the bathroom. Later, my brother-in-law returned, ready to leave the house for good. Fed up with his role as caretaker, he announced his departure, leaving my husband and mother-in-law to their devices. Unable to endure the toxicity any longer, I followed suit, requesting my brother-in-law to drop me off at the nearby station. My husband's desperate attempts to stop me only fueled my resolve. Firmly, I declared my intent to divorce, reminding him of his indifference to my plight the day before. I vowed to prepare the divorce papers myself, determined to break free from the suffocating atmosphere. I sat in my brother-in-law's car as he drove me to the nearest station, his apologies pouring forth. "I'm truly sorry, Maddie. I never imagined you'd suffer like this. Those cruel people are strangers to me now," he confessed earnestly. Once back in my apartment, I wasted no time. I drafted the divorce papers and began packing my husband's belongings. Upon his return, he was taken aback to find his things neatly packed. My mention of divorce seemed to him a jest until he laid eyes on the papers. Infuriated, he dismissed my concerns as trivial. Realizing further conversation was futile, I quietly handed him the documents. Reluctantly, he signed them, and just like that, he was gone. However, it became evident that he lacked the means to secure another place to stay. Throughout our marriage, he had been reliant on my income, often squandering his own and accumulating debt. Initially crashing with a coworker, even that support dwindled over time, leaving him isolated and jobless. Meanwhile, rumors swirled about my mother-in-law's behavior, painting her as the catalyst for our divorce. She, too, faced solitude and financial strain, abandoned by both family and neighbors. With my brother-in-law also gone, she struggled to make ends meet on her pension, isolated in the countryside without any assistance. In the aftermath of the divorce, I rid my home of the garish furniture my husband had chosen, embracing a fresh start with pieces of my own preference. Hopeful for a brighter future and open to new, positive encounters, I embarked on a journey of self-renewal.
My name is Emily, age 44, and I'm employed as a TV broadcaster. Alongside me is my husband Tom, also 44, who manages a photography studio. Our journey began in high school, where we became each other's first and only significant other. The path to marriage was natural, as if destiny had woven our lives together seamlessly. At 25, tragedy struck when I lost my parents in an accident. In the aftermath, Tom's unwavering support was a lifeline, solidifying his place as not just a husband but a familial anchor. Post-nuptials, Tom relocated to my childhood home, a sanctuary left behind by my parents, where I found solace in our shared space. Our union bore fruit with the arrival of our son, bringing immense joy into our lives. Tom proved to be the epitome of an egalitarian partner, seamlessly balancing household responsibilities and childcare, a testament to his commitment to our shared goals. Yet, Amidst our bliss, a shadow loomed in the form of my mother-in-law, Jen. She couldn't reconcile with the sight of Tom, a man, taking charge of domestic duties. Reflecting on an incident a decade past, when our son was just beginning elementary school, Jen's presence escalated. With the transition from nursery to elementary school came logistical challenges, prompting us to rely on her assistance in ferrying our son home. Her frequent visits coincided with her husband Steve's retirement, affording them both ample free time. Jen, a staunch traditionalist, had embraced the role of homemaker while Steve was less inclined towards household chores. Whenever Tom found himself in the kitchen, effortlessly whipping up meals, Jen's disapproval lingered audibly in muttered phrases like, "A man's place isn't in the kitchen," or nostalgic remarks about how their generation wouldn't conceive of such occurrences. Upon my initial visit to their home, Jen wasted no time in expressing her expectation for me to relinquish my career aspirations, firmly rooted in her belief that women should prioritize homemaking. My role as a glamorous broadcaster seemed to irk her, contrasting sharply with her worldview. Yet Tom, who had witnessed my passion for broadcasting since our high school days, remained steadfast in his support for my ambitions. Likewise, I championed his pursuit of photography, and our symbiotic collaboration felt organic and effortless. Navigating the challenges of nursery school proved to be a joint effort, but the transition to elementary school brought unexpected hurdles, particularly with after-school care proving less accommodating. This compelled us to lean on Jen's assistance more heavily. As she began to frequent our home, her critiques of household tasks became a common refrain. Despite Tom's nonchalant responses defending our division of labor, Jen persisted in voicing her disapproval, often behind my back. Yet, recognizing her invaluable help, I chose to endure her comments in silence, opting not to engage in confrontation. Despite her traditional values, Jen had a surprising affinity for modern conveniences. Proudly brandishing her smartphone, she boasted of being the sole owner among her peers, reveling in the ease of access it provided. "I'm ahead of the curve," she proclaimed, enthusiastically exploring the internet for various purposes. "Look at how simple it is to do things now," she remarked, advocating for the adoption of convenient tools. Embracing the digital age, she efficiently utilized online platforms for tasks like restaurant reservations and service bookings. However, Jen's embrace of modernity seemed selective when it came to our family's shopping habits. Disapproving of our reliance on a delivery service for weekly grocery orders, she voiced her dissent with comments like, "You should handle the shopping yourself," and lamented the perceived wastefulness of delivery fees. Yet, her tune changed upon discovering the option to order groceries online. Encouraging me to embrace this newfound convenience, she eagerly advocated for the abandonment of outdated paper forms, highlighting the benefits of digital shopping. During evenings when Jen lingered at our home while Tom and I prepared dinner, she often cited the need to return for Steve's meal, emphasizing his inability to dine alone. Steve's aversion to household tasks was evident, leaving Jen to shoulder the domestic burden. Curious about Tom's contrasting approach, I once questioned him about his cooperative attitude towards chores, given his upbringing. Tom's response shed light on his determination to avoid the same complaints his mother had voiced about his father's lack of involvement. It was a lesson learned through observation of negative patterns. Jen's frustration with her husband's reluctance to contribute to household chores was palpable, contrasting with her bemusement at her son's willingness to pitch in. Perplexed by her seemingly contradictory stance, I suspected that Jen found solace in airing grievances, prompting me to maintain a cautious distance. Little did I know at the time, Jen's mounting frustrations would eventually lead her to take drastic actions, such as selling our house without consent, revealing the depths of her desperation. That summer brought an exciting opportunity when my company extended an invitation for a 2-month business trip abroad to cover a sports broadcast at the World Championship. It was a rare chance that felt like the culmination of my hard work and dedication. Recognizing the significance of this opportunity, I turned to Tom for guidance. Amidst his own commitments, he expressed uncertainty about managing both work and caring for our son John. It was then that Jen, who had been quietly listening, stepped in with an offer to assist. Despite lingering reservations from past encounters, the absence of alternative options left me with little choice but to entrust John's care to Jen. While considering the option of having Tom and John stay with Tom's parents, we realized the logistical challenges of commuting to school from their location. Ultimately, we settled on the arrangement of Jen staying at our home during weekdays to provide care for John. With this plan in motion, I embarked on my business trip, fully immersing myself in the sportscasting work and achieving significant strides in my career. Exhausted and relieved to be back in the US, I trudged towards my home on a weekday afternoon, burdened by the weight of my suitcase. As I approached the entrance, I was met by Jen, who seemed oddly eager. Prepared to express my gratitude for her assistance during my absence, I was blindsided by her unexpected declaration. "This house sold for $300,000, so I'm taking the full amount." Stunned, I struggled to process her words. "Our house?" I questioned incredulously, hoping for some clarification. With a gleam in her eyes, Jen affirmed, "Yes, this house. Well, actually, we don't technically own it." Her sudden backtrack only added to my confusion, prompting me to question the authenticity of her claim. However, Jen dismissed my doubts with laughter, insisting on the validity of her statement and brandishing the registration certificate as evidence. As she stood there, arms crossed and seemingly victorious, I realized that reasoning with her would be futile. Deciding to change tactics, I attempted to redirect the conversation. "Let's set that aside for a moment. Why are you selling it?" I inquired, hoping for some semblance of explanation. With a nonchalant air, Jen declared, "What belongs to the wife belongs to the husband, and therefore to me. I'm using it to build a new house." Her rationale, though flawed, hinted at a deeper agenda, leaving me grappling with a sense of disbelief and betrayal. As Jen's words echoed in the air, her bloodshot eyes filled me with a creeping sense of unease. The notion of a new house, one that belonged to both my husband and me, suddenly seemed tainted with a sinister undertone. Her resolve was palpable as she outlined her intentions, driven by a misguided sense of obligation to shield Tom from household chores. "I've raised him not to engage in such tasks, and I won't allow him to do so in the future," she declared with unwavering conviction. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, it became clear that Jen's perception of Tom's role in our household had been distorted from the beginning. A simple act of solidarity, when Tom had insisted on sharing household responsibilities shortly after our marriage, had been misconstrued by Jen. In her eyes, Tom's willingness to contribute was a mere reflection of his residence in my house, rather than a genuine commitment to shared responsibilities. The concept of a working couple collaborating on household duties simply did not register in her worldview. Delving deeper into the situation, I discovered the underlying financial strain plaguing Jen and Steve following Steve's retirement. With his pension falling short, expectations and job opportunities scarce, they found themselves grappling with the daunting prospect of maintaining their rented apartment. It was this sense of desperation that drove them to resort to such unthinkable measures. "No. This house isn't mine, and Tom thinks it's normal to do housework," I asserted, attempting to counter Jen's accusations. Yet, before I could elaborate further, Jen dismissed my words as lies, adamantly refusing to entertain any alternative interpretation. Desperate for clarity amidst the chaos, I redirected the conversation towards practical details. "Where did you sell it?" I inquired, hoping to gain insight into the situation. Jen confirmed my suspicions, revealing that she had engaged an online evaluation real estate agent, AA Real Estate, to facilitate the sale. With minimal effort, the necessary documents were submitted, and the transaction proceeded seamlessly. "It's a convenient world, isn't it?" she remarked with a hint of satisfaction. As the details emerged, it became apparent that Jen had acted impulsively, swayed by the assurances of the real estate agent. The allure of a lucrative offer, coupled with the buyer's eagerness for a property in our area, had seemingly convinced her of the transaction's merits, selling a 20-year-old house for $300,000. "I found a good real estate, didn't I?" she boasted proudly, oblivious to the turmoil her actions had caused. As I delved into my investigation, I came across a website for the real estate company that appeared legitimate. Attempting to confirm the validity of the sale, I dialed their number, only to be met with silence on the other end. Seeking clarification from Jen regarding her involvement, I demanded to know if she had physically visited the real estate company's address. Her response was dismissive, claiming that such visits were unnecessary in today's digital age. Determined to uncover the truth, I issued a firm ultimatum: visit the address in person the following day, or our discussion would cease. To my astonishment, Jen's tearful call the next day confirmed my worst fears. The purported real estate company was nowhere to be found. In its place stood a derelict wooden structure devoid of life. Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but burst into laughter at Jen's folly. Upon her return, Jen confessed to her misguided actions, Fueled by a misplaced sense of opportunity upon discovering the house registration certificate in my name during my absence, she had enlisted the services of the real estate agent. Their shameless assurances, coupled with Jen's naivety, led her to believe that the sale was legitimate, even without actual ownership. In her eagerness to seize what she perceived as an opportunity, she had unwittingly fallen prey to deception, providing the agent with all the requested documents without hesitation. Upon discovering a potential buyer, the fraudulent real estate agents demanded a deposit, half of their commission fee, amounting to $4,800, equivalent to half of the $9,600 commission promised for the $300,000 sale. Concerned about the gravity of the situation, I promptly contacted the authorities to report the scam. 2 officers were dispatched to our home to investigate the matter further. To our dismay, the police officers revealed that such internet fraud, masquerading as legitimate real estate agents, had become increasingly prevalent. Their modus operandi involved offering free property valuations, soliciting official documents from unsuspecting victims, introducing a fictitious buyer, and then absconding with a hefty fee. It was a cunning scheme that preyed on the vulnerabilities of individuals seeking to sell their properties. With the proliferation of vacant houses and the ease of fabricating addresses for document delivery, such fraudulent activities had surged in recent times. The officers theorized that the fraudsters likely designated a postbox under a fictitious name to receive the documents. Trembling with apprehension, Jen cooperated with the police, providing them with vital information. However, their inquiry took a startling turn when the officer questioned Jen about the house deed. In a barely audible voice, she admitted, "No, it was the original." The revelation left the officer visibly astounded, underscoring the severity of the situation and the extent of Jen's unwitting participation in the scam. As the police officer turned to me for clarification, I calmly denied any involvement in requesting the deposit. "No, I didn't ask for that," I stated plainly. Despite Jen's visibly distressed state, the officer seemed to lean towards trusting my account over hers. "She says she didn't ask for it. Selling things on your own isn't advisable, madame." "This situation is outrageous," he admonished, casting a disapproving glance at Jen, who remained silent, her lip bitten in remorse. Turning his attention back to Jen, the officer probed further about the deed registration. "You sent a copy, right?" Her barely audible response, "No, it was the original," left the officer even more incredulous. His dismay evident, he exchanged a glance with me, silently acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Sensing the need for resolution, the officer inquired about filing a theft report. However, I declined, explaining that the document had no validity in the sale process. "Actually, this house has already been sold to someone else," I revealed, elaborating on the legal changes that rendered the deed registration obsolete in such transactions. While I cherished the deed as a memento of my parents' legacy, its practical significance had diminished over time. With this revelation, the reality of the situation began to sink in, leaving Jen with a heavy sense of regret. As the reality of the situation began to dawn on Jen, she realized her misunderstanding regarding the deed and its implications. In her mind, the presence of the deed signified ongoing ownership of the house. Unaware that its significance had diminished in the sale process orchestrated by the fraudsters, faced with embarrassment and frustration, she turned her gaze towards me with a hint of resentment, questioning why I hadn't sold the house myself. Her muttered words stung, insinuating that my career choices had led to our current predicament. Meeting her gaze with a calm resolve, I explained the true reason behind the sale: Tom's ambition to pursue his dream photography business. With insufficient funds to kickstart his venture, we had made the difficult decision to part with our cherished family home, selling it to an acquaintance and subsequently renting it back. As I recounted the series of events, Jen's demeanor shifted, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Her tearful outburst laid bare the deeper frustrations plaguing her own life, revealing the stark contrast between her own marital struggles and our united front. As she lamented her husband's perceived shortcomings, her grievances poured forth unabated, leaving the police officer at a loss for words as he struggled to navigate the emotional turmoil unfolding before him. Despite filing a fraud report, the perpetrators remained elusive, evading capture for over a decade, leaving little hope for the recovery of the lost funds. In the wake of the ordeal, Steve's trust in Jen waned, prompting him to assume full control over their finances. Stripped of any financial autonomy, Jen found herself relegated to seeking Steve's approval for even the most basic expenses, a restriction she found suffocating and frustrating. As she grappled with the consequences of her actions, Jen turned to Tom for solace, only to be met with a reminder of her own culpability. Bereft of disposable income, she sought employment through senior job listings, eventually finding fulfillment in teaching the elderly how to navigate modern technology. Despite her own struggles, Jen's empathetic approach endeared her to her students, earning her respect for her ability to relate to their challenges and patiently guide them through the intricacies of smartphone usage. Though her circumstances had shifted dramatically, Jen found solace in her newfound role, finding purpose in helping others navigate the digital age. Steve, driven perhaps by his pride, found senior roles unfulfilling and promptly resigned, leaving him without a source of income. Meanwhile, Jen's schedule has become increasingly hectic, often leaving him to tend to household chores as she attends to her commitments. Surprisingly, Steve has discovered a newfound passion for cooking and is honing his skills in the kitchen. The dynamics in Tom's parents' household have shifted dramatically, yet both individuals seem to have found a sense of satisfaction in their new roles. In my own journey, following a successful overseas business trip, I've ascended the career ladder and now serve as the anchor for the evening news. Tom's photography studio is thriving, and together, we've accumulated enough savings to contemplate repurchasing and renovating the family home. We remain grateful to our acquaintance who allowed us to retain ownership of the house despite the distressing ordeal we endured. Ultimately, the situation proved beneficial for Tom's parents. As our son nears adulthood at 17, I've imparted this tale to him as a lesson on the dangers of internet fraud. However, out of respect for his grandparents, I've chosen to keep the aspect of their attempt to sell our house a secret, preserving their dignity.